Mark Rogers TV on the line with Chad Scott, who's been covering SEC football for over 20 years. Graduate of Auburn University, he's had a number of stops along the radio path across the country, and also produced the Colin Cowherd show. Would love to hear about that one, Chad. So
Sure.
let's start there, because you helped launch that show, and it's probably been the most popular radio talk show across the country in the sports field. So, man, tell us about that experience.
I worked with Colin his first 3 years at ESPN. So that would have been 2004 to 2007. I think I was with Tony Kornheiser for his last 7 or 8 months. And before I got to ESPN, Tony, as I was interviewing for the producer job on his show, let me know, hey, I may not be long for this. And that was fine with me. Tony was wonderful to me at all times, and launching Colin's show and getting to know Colin and kind of laying a foundation for what his, national radio career has become is one of the greatest achievements of my professional career. Colin is immensely talented. There's a lot of things I could say about Colin and how authentic he is, and that person that comes out of the speakers is the same person that he is off the air, which I think is why there's such a tremendous connection to him. But Colin, more than anything else, and it's the greatest compliment maybe I can give anyone, when I knew him, and again, this was, and we are in touch seldom now, but when we were working together every day, he's the happiest person I ever knew. Okay, he is the most self-adjusted, self-aware, happy with what he has, not continually, looking over his shoulder at what he doesn't have, least petty, most secure person I've ever met. And in radio, that's an incredibly rare set of attributes to have. I could go on and on and on about Colin, but a great person, someone I've considered a friend, and someone who I think has done a great deal to change sports talk radio for the better.
Yeah, based on what I hear out of Colin, yeah, he seems very genuine in that he doesn't mind saying, you know what, I don't know anything about that. I'm a complete moron when it comes to this. But he will also tell you, I know what I'm talking about. I understand this. I may understand this better than anyone. He's very sure of himself when it comes to that, and very plain spoken. It's just enough highbrow to be humorous on one level, but it's down to earth. It's a strange.
Yeah, it's very consumable content. It's and one of the words we kept going back to when we were working together was relatable. How is this relatable to someone who's driving a delivery van all day, or has a white collar job, or a kid in college? We didn't want to talk about X's and O's. We didn't want to talk about topics that were merely sports topics. We wanted to take every issue we discussed and put it through the lens of a regular person, something you might experience in a relationship, something you might experience in your office, something you might have experienced with your kids or your girlfriends. Somehow find that relatable thread in Kobe Bryant to the guy in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And we and Colin continues, I think, to do probably a better job of that than anyone else, making his show really mass appeal based on using these sports topics as kind of springboards into conversations about life lessons and mind hacks and different ways to approach getting through every day, regardless of what your profession happens to be.
So, Chad, of course, that's not your only radio experience. You've been in Atlanta, Jacksonville currently, had a major gig there in Birmingham. So what makes, and you've already hit upon it to a certain extent, but what makes good radio?
What makes good radio? Well, I think for starters, and here's kind of the advice I give everyone now, you have to understand your audience, okay? Colin has a much different audience than we do here at 1010XL in Jacksonville. And if you don't first recognize that difference, you are doomed to fail. We don't do the topics Colin does. Colin today is probably hitting, LeBron hard and, I don't know what else, because it doesn't matter to me what he's doing for topics. Here we're some LeBron, Orlando shooting, because that's just down the road. Jaguars mini camp starts tomorrow. That's a huge topic for us. Colin's not going to talk about the Jaguars starting a 3-day mandatory mini camp tomorrow. Florida State in a baseball super regional. So everything I do now, and when I talk to my producers or people new to the business, I say, first things first, who is your audience? Once you understand who your audience is, you can begin tailoring your content and your message to them, because you're not doing the show for yourself. You're doing the show for your audience. And whether your audience is national or, late at night, first thing in the morning, Chicago, Nashville, Jacksonville, Austin, Texas, LA, those people are all, those audiences are all going to have different demands and expectations. And that's what you have to first recognize and understand to put out a good talk show.
Chad Scott joining us from 1010XL in Jacksonville there. College football has been entrenched in the South forever. The Jacksonville Jaguars, you just mentioned them, not successful recently, had a great run when they first formed. Been around 21 years, I think, since 1995. What's the mix there? What's the balance between powers there?
Well, it's interesting. When I moved to Jacksonville 4 years ago from Atlanta, I expected the Jaguars, obviously it's an NFL team. They're going to have a fan base, but I didn't recognize the extent to which this was an NFL city. Okay, we're talking about Florida State, Georgia, all nearby. The Florida-Georgia game is here. The TaxSlayer Bowl, formerly the Gator Bowl, is here. The Jaguars own this city, and it's not even close. The Jaguars are a bigger conversation driver than Florida State, and Georgia, and those are power programs, okay? We're not talking about, UCF, FIU, and USF, no disrespect. We're talking about Florida, Georgia, and Florida State. Jaguars conversation on our radio station year-round, I doubt if it's ever less than 70%. And that's with 3 incredibly prominent houses all nearby with lots of alumni in this town. But the Jaguars, ever since they launched, have become increasingly more popular, and I think that goes to show the power of the NFL. It's still a strong college market. People here love their college football. We talk a lot about college football, but the Jaguars are number one by a mile.
I am shocked by
despite
the
their lack of
7-30
success.
ratio.
Yeah, and I was surprised too when I got here.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that. We talk a lot of college football here. We specifically focus on the SEC. So you being an Auburn guy,
yeah,
I don't think there's a roller coaster like it across the country over the last 7 or 8 years. Pre-Cam Newton had gone through a rough stretch, transitioning from Tommy Tuberville, but still won games, got to postseason play. Cam Newton, of course, has the one magical year, then he's gone. Then the nosedive to 0-8, and I don't have this historically checked out, but I'm going to just about guarantee nobody's gone winless in a conference and then to the national championship game the next year. Gus Malzahn's a genius, not so much a genius now after 15-11 the last 2 years. Wow.
Incredible peaks and valleys. And, even you look at the 2000s, undefeated in 2004, fire Tommy Tuberville a couple of years later, national championship with Cam, 0-8 like you talked about in conference a couple of years later, then get to the national championship game, 2 disappointing seasons. So it's a very schizophrenic experience. Fortunately, there are highs to go along with those lows. And, that's, what Auburn fans are looking for or looking to correct with Gus Malzahn. Yes, we want the highs, but how do we make that? I forget which is mean, median, and mode. But how do we get that average into the 8-9 win category and avoid these 6-win, 7-win regular seasons? And with the resources that Auburn has at its disposal, I don't think that's unreasonable to ask. It's not easy when you play Alabama and LSU and Texas A&M and Georgia every single year. But the last 2 seasons have unquestionably been disappointing based on the level of talent in that program, based on expectations. So I think Gus Malzahn has a lot to prove this season.
For 6 years, I covered the SEC as a sports director in Mississippi. I was about an hour away from Alabama. Ole Miss, Mississippi State right there. I tell people the story of coming back from Ohio. That's where I'm from, in the middle of the summer. It's like late June.
Mhm.
And as soon as I could pick up some either Birmingham or a Nashville radio station,
Yeah.
they were arguing Auburn-Alabama in
Mhm.
mid-June.
Yeah.
So being an Auburn guy, can you in somehow convey to the rest of us what that means, and also being second fiddle consistently, when if you pluck that program out and take it anywhere else in the country, and even being second fiddle, it's a top 15 program consistently,
Yeah.
what that's like?
Well, I think an understanding of the Auburn-Alabama rivalry has to start. The headwaters is the state of Alabama has very little to be proud about. Let's be quite frank about that. If you look at infant mortality rates, obesity rates, levels of high school dropouts, births to unwed teenage mothers, Alabama is going to rank very high in all of those negative social demographic categories, as does most of the rest of the South. So why is Alabama and the South so proud of its college football? Because that's what we have to be proud of. Okay. And that's just the reality. So in Alabama, you have an entire state with a little bit of an inferiority complex because the rest of the nation tells us how stupid and poor and fat we are. But damn, we're really good at this football thing. And then there's nothing else. So what does it mean? It means everything, because there is no Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL team, good college basketball that we can divert our attention to. It's this and nothing else, and it's this year round. And the people there have really embraced that. As far as being second fiddle, I don't view it that way, obviously, as an Auburn graduate, because I don't view myself as second fiddle to anyone. We are Auburn. I am Auburn, and that, my degree is not based on how many national championships Alabama has. And I think that's a big difference between the two fan bases. I think Auburn has fewer sidewalk alumni. So Auburn people are less likely to hang their self-esteem based on the winning percentage of the football team, because we have a deeper connection in general to the university based on having gone there. Whether the football team wins or loses does not change my feeling about Auburn University one way, shape, or form. And when I think about the relationships I made at Auburn, the memories I created at Auburn, well, football is a part of that. It is a tiny part of that. And if Auburn football went away tomorrow, that would be heartbreaking, but I would still love Auburn. And I think there are a lot of Alabama fans who like Alabama, who love Alabama football, but really have no connection to the university.
Very well said. Yeah, poor choice of words on my part. Definitely there.
But that's the common perception. And if you look at it from a purely football standpoint, that's accurate. I mean, very few programs stack up nationally to Alabama's historic success. But when I consider Auburn and Alabama, I'm talking about a much wider abstract than just football.
All right, Chad Scott from 1010XL joining us. So one last thing before we let you go. I know you've got a ton going on. Any real good feel for the SEC this season? Anybody that you think might be overvalued or undervalued? Not asking for a pick necessarily, but
yeah,
what's your feel for this right now?
I wonder if Ole Miss is going to be as good as everyone thinks they are. I understand they've got the best quarterback in the conference in Chad Kelly. But it's hard for me to believe that they're going to lose Laramie Tunsil, Robert Kimdichie, and Laquan Treadwell and just be the same team or better. That's hard for me to believe. In the East, I think Florida might take a step back before it takes a couple of steps forward. I think this is a now or never year for Butch Jones, with Kirby Smart new at Georgia, with Florida, again, trying to find itself in a quarterback, with Jim McElwain, the rest of the division, Missouri, Kentucky, South Carolina, all down. I think Tennessee fans can legitimately ask themselves, if Butch Jones doesn't win a division title this year, when will he? And in the West, I think it's largely about Alabama at top, LSU with 17, I think, returning starters, including a returning quarterback. They've got 6 or 8 first-round NFL draft potential guys on that roster. That's another, if not now, Les, when are we going to win another division? And, question marks at Texas A&M and Auburn. I think those teams will be intriguing to watch, and that they could go any of a number of directions.
All right, Chad Scott from 1010XL in Jacksonville has been covering SEC football for a long, long time. And I think next time we get together, Chad, if we're able to track you down again, unabashed supporter of the Bowl Championship Series, I think
Yes.
You've got a debate on your hand.
I'd be happy to talk about that one.
Thanks a lot, Chad. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.